2:17 a.m. The phone vibrates against the nightstand, cutting through the silence like a scream. Pastor Jake Matthews rolls over, squinting at the caller ID. Marcus, emergency. In 8 years of accountability partnership, Marcus has never called this late unless something was catastrophically wrong. Jake. Marcus's voice is barely a whisper. I need help. Sarah found the emails. Jake's stomach drops. For 6 months, Marcus has been confessing his emotional affair with a woman from his congregation. Confessing, repenting, promising to end it, then falling back into the same pattern. Jake had been praying, confronting, pleading with his friend to step back from the cliff edge. Now, Marcus had fallen off. Where are you? Jake asks, already getting dressed. Sitting in my car outside the church. Sarah threw me out. The kids, Jake, my kids looked at me like I was a stranger. Marcus's voice breaks. I've lost everything. My family, my ministry, my reputation, everything. You know that call, don't you? Maybe not about an affair, but about something. The 2 a.m. confession when someone's life implodes and you're the only person they trust with the wreckage. The moment when friendship stops being about shared interests and becomes about shared humanity in its most broken form. Jake could have given the speech about consequences and poor choices. He could have said, I told you so. He could have protected his own reputation by creating distance from Marcus's scandal. Instead, Jake says 6 words that will define the next chapter of both their lives. Tell me where you are. I'm coming. Covenant friendship isn't about finding people you enjoy spending time with. It's about choosing people you're willing to bleed with. It's about the kind of love that doesn't run when the other person becomes difficult to love. The kind that shows up at 2:17 a.m. with no questions asked and no conditions attached. The kind that would rather risk everything than watch someone fall alone. Jake finds Marcus slumped over his steering wheel in the church parking lot. Through the windshield, he can see his friend's shoulders shaking with sobs that sound like they're tearing him apart from the inside. Jake climbs into the passenger seat and simply sits. No sermon about sin, no lecture about consequences, no attempt to minimize the catastrophe with spiritual platitudes. Just presence in the wreckage. I don't know how to come back from this, Marcus finally whispers. You don't have to figure that out tonight, Jake replies. Tonight, you just need to not be alone. Where will I go? Sarah won't let me in the house. The church board will ask for my resignation tomorrow. I've got nowhere. Jake's response surprises even himself. You'll stay with Linda and me, as long as it takes. This is the scandal of incarnate friendship. It doesn't just offer sympathy from a safe distance. It moves in, takes up residence in the disaster, makes the other person's shame its own burden. It chooses to be contaminated by association rather than protected by separation. The story of Jonathan and David has always puzzled me. Here's Jonathan, heir to the throne of Israel, choosing to love the man who would take his place. Not just accepting David's rise, but actively facilitating it. When David achieved military victories that made the people sing, "David has slain his 10,000s, while Saul has slain his thousands," Jonathan didn't retreat into jealousy or political calculation. Instead, he took off his royal robe and gave it to David, his sword, his bow, his belt, the symbols of his own authority and inheritance. Jonathan was essentially saying, "Your success doesn't diminish who I am. Your calling doesn't threaten mine. Your rise doesn't require my fall." This is covenant friendship, love that celebrates the other's victory even when it costs you everything. Marcus's restoration doesn't happen quickly. The first month in Jake's guest room is brutal. Daily phone calls from angry church members, meetings with devastated leadership, the slow work of individual apologies to people he's hurt. Jake and Linda absorb the social cost of harboring a fallen pastor. Some church members question Jake's judgment. Others suggest he's enabling sin rather than promoting holiness. But Jake has studied enough scripture to know that restoration is a community process, not an individual one. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. Restore. Not abandon, not shame, not exile. Restore. The process is messy. Marcus has to face not just the affair, but the emotional patterns that led to it. The need for admiration that made him vulnerable to someone who looked at him like he was special. The loneliness in his marriage that he'd been medicating with attention instead of addressing with honesty. Sarah has to decide whether to fight for their marriage or walk away. Whether forgiveness is possible when trust has been shattered, whether love can survive when it's been contaminated by betrayal. And Jake has to learn what it means to walk with someone through consequences without trying to shield them from the pain. 6 months later, something extraordinary happens. Not a miraculous restoration to Marcus's previous position. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. But something better. The emergence of a man who's learned to live without the mask. Marcus starts serving at a homeless shelter. Not as a pastor, but as a volunteer who knows what it feels like to lose everything. His marriage to Sarah begins the slow work of healing, built this time on honesty instead of performance. And Jake discovers that his willingness to risk his reputation for his friend's soul has taught his entire congregation what grace looks like in real time. "I thought I was helping Marcus," Jake reflects years later. "But God used that crisis to teach me what the gospel actually looks like." It's easy to preach about grace when everyone's doing well. It's another thing entirely to incarnate grace when someone's life is falling apart. Marcus's restoration wasn't just about saving his marriage or his ministry. It was about our entire community learning that we serve a God who specializes in resurrection. Tonight, maybe someone in your life is sitting in their car outside a church or a job or a relationship they've just destroyed. Maybe they're carrying shame so heavy they can barely breathe. Maybe they've called you because you're the only person they trust with the truth about who they really are. The world will tell you to protect yourself, to maintain appropriate boundaries, to avoid being contaminated by association with failure. But covenant friendship operates on different principles entirely. It says, your worst moment doesn't disqualify you from love. Your biggest mistake doesn't define your worth. Your catastrophic failure doesn't put you beyond the reach of grace. It says, I'll sit with you in the wreckage. I'll help you sift through the debris. I'll walk with you through the consequences without trying to shield you from the growth. Covenant friendship is risky. It costs reputation, time, emotional energy. It requires you to love people when they're least lovable, to believe in them when they can't believe in themselves, to see their potential when all evidence points to their failure. But it's also the closest thing to divine love that most people will ever experience, because it mirrors the love that pursued us while we were still sinners, that chose us before we chose Him, that refuses to let our worst moments write our final story. Jonathan never became king. His loyalty to David cost him his inheritance, his position, his future. But he gained something better. The knowledge that he had participated in God's plan rather than resisting it, that he had chosen love over self-interest, that his name would be remembered not for what he achieved, but for how he loved. The phone is ringing. The car is in the parking lot. The friend is sitting in the wreckage of their choices, wondering if anyone will risk loving them back to life. What will you choose? Self-protection or sacred friendship? Reputation or restoration? The safety of distance or the risk of incarnate love? Because someone's life may depend on whether you're willing to say 6 simple words. Tell me where you are, I'm coming.